All right, guys, how you doing? I'm Shawn Cheek of webpianoteacher.com. We are on lesson 6, so make sure you've done lessons 1 through 5 before you try this one. If you've already played and thought, well, I'll just jump into lesson 6 since I've already played a little, want to get my sight reading better. You really have to start lesson 1 because it's the concepts that I'm teaching, the way I'm doing the things that are so important, and you've missed all that. You've missed the core of it if you haven't done lessons 1 through 5, okay? And here we go, lesson 6. Have you done your flashcards? Have you played lessons 1 through 5 today, right now? Not yesterday's not good enough, but that's good. You played them yesterday. Play them today. And then we'll try lesson 6 here. All right. So we have harmonic intervals. So I've tried to teach, some music theory things along with sight reading because it helps. It's a roadmap. It's understanding the language of music. When I was in high school, I took Spanish, and I was very good at pronouncing. I knew the rules of pronunciation, but I really didn't understand what I was saying. I kind of knew some vocabulary, but never really connected. I think a lot of people do that when they are in Spanish class. Never really learned to speak the language. So that's kind of what it's like if you're just playing the notes and you don't know any music theory. You don't know anything about chords or scales. You don't know the language of music. It really helps. It's a roadmap. How much better would I have spoken Spanish if I'd really understood what I was saying? Okay, so I'm going to kind of help you with that. Music theory is just understanding the language of music is all it is. It's understanding what chords are and scales because everything is chords and scales in some form or fashion. It really is. Whether you're playing Bach or whether you're playing, let's see, that is Bruce Springsteen behind me, Asbury Park. Yeah, whether you're playing Bach or Bruce Springsteen, chords and scales, all of it. It really is. And so we're going to talk about those things as we're learning because they help your sight reading. Okay, you need to know the notes up here. Okay, you need to be able to, say it and play it, know what they are without counting up and all that stuff. You also need to have the keyboard awareness to be able to move around the piano without looking at your hands. Very possible. No, it's not impossible. It's very possible if you do the right things. And the third thing you need is an understanding of how music works, and it's not really as complicated, difficult as you might think. And I try to go about it in a way that doesn't overwhelm you. All right. I think a lot of our music theory teachers are sometimes we get a little puffed up and want to show our knowledge and how much we know, and we kind of intimidate people and can scare them off sometimes. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to make it as simple as I can for you. So let's get to the board. All right, so review. Review is so important because it's doing things again and again. Here a little, there a little. Precept upon precept, line upon line, doing something methodically and over and repeating it because that's how we learn. It's repetition. So I'll say it backwards. This is a staff. What is a staff composed of? And I hope you say 4 spaces and 5 lines. 5 lines and 4 spaces. A staff. Which clef is the treble clef? Which clef is the bass clef? I hope you said this one was the treble and this one was the bass. Right hand, left hand. Oh, finally, I put a time signature back. There's 4/4. It's called the time signature. Okay. There's also something called a key signature later that we'll talk about. Not yet. All right. This is called a brace. That little curvy thing there. And this is the grand staff with the treble clef and bass clef there. Just good to know those terms. These are what? These lines, these vertical lines are called bar lines, and they separate the piece into what? Measures. Measures of 4/4 time. 4 counts in a measure. The bottom 4 tells us that the quarter note gets 1 count. That's all we've known is the quarter note getting 1 count. Sometimes the quarter note doesn't get 1 count. That'll come later. But for most music, the quarter note gets 4 counts. Yeah, and we'll talk about why it would be different and all that later. Not Not everything at once. These black notes are called quarter notes. They get one count, right? And what are the white notes called with this, Tim? Hope you said half note. What are these goose egg notes called? Hope you said whole note. How many counts does a whole note get? Hope you think 4. And a half note gets 2. Okay? So intervals. Intervals mean how much distance between each note, okay? And before we do that, before we get into intervals, I just want to play from here to here. Measures 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? And it starts with the left hand. First we have, I hope you know the name of this note without counting up or using a reference point. I hope you just know that that's a G. Okay, very good. G, G. Now, you're going to play F with the G. I know it's catty-cornered. It looks like the F is first, but you actually play them at the same time. Okay? Because if they were on top of each other, it would look like a little globby mess. So, here we go, F and G. And then we play E and G at the same time. And then we play D and G at the same time. Notice you're playing the G every time. Okay, so that's a D and a G. And then you play a C and a G 2 times. Back to D and a G 2 times. E and G 2 times. Now, so you know, hopefully, what the names of those notes are. You can play them without looking down at your hand. You may need to look a little bit because it's the first time you've actually played 2 notes in one hand. That's okay, look a little bit just to get started, but then don't look at your hand after that. But I also want to talk about intervals, okay? Intervals are the distance between 2 notes. And allergies are getting me today. So we have a G, 2 Gs. Now, that's called a second, okay? So you have a G and an F. The distance between those 2 notes is a second. 2. You count both notes. 1, 2. The distance between E and G is called a third. A space to the very next space is a third. So is a line to a line, but space to a space is called a third. They sit on top of one another, just nice like that. Third. Now, when you go down a little more, the distance increases and you have a fourth. But I want you to look at what they look like, okay? The second is always kind of catty-cornered like that because the notes are close together. So you know a second, the distance between those 2 notes is very close, as close as you can get. The third is going to be nice on top of each other, you know. They're just going to sit on top of each other very nicely. And the fourth is going to be a line and a space. And so let's look at that again. See the third sit on top of each other like that, nice and pretty. But then the fourth's a little further apart, and it's a space and a line. And you can see the distance. Now, even if you don't think of D and G in the names of the notes, you can see that's a fourth. One more. A space to a space, but they don't sit nice on top of each other like the third did. There's a space in between. So space to space, and you can feel that distance with your eyes as you look and see that that is a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you count all the notes. C, D, E, F, G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. D to G is a fourth. D, E, F, G. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Now, here's why that helps. Because anytime you have a second, it's going to look like that. No matter where it is on the staff, line or space, right hand, left hand, it's going to look catty-cornered like that. And you're going to know it's a second because of the way it looks. When you see a third and the notes are on top of each other, nice like that, you know, just sitting, you know it's a third. Whether it's line, line, or space, space, whether it's right hand, left hand, whether it's high or low, doesn't matter. It's a third, and you'll feel that distance in your hand. So imagine knowing that as well as knowing each individual note without having to have a reference point. Like I've been having you do with the flashcards, you can do that, and you know what thirds and fourths and seconds are. It helps. You're a double threat. With your sight reading, it helps. Those things will start working together. I just want you to recognize and realize and put a name to these things because they're going to help coming up when we do chords, okay? And I'll show you what I mean, a little quick peek into how this will help. When you play a third and a fifth together, you have a chord. You ever done that? C, E, G? Okay? A chord is made out of thirds and even a fifth, those distances. Okay? So they're the building blocks of everything else we're going to do. Now, that's a fifth, that's a fourth, that's a third. Okay? So if you want to, you can say G, G, second, second, third, third, fourth, C, fifth, fifth, fourth, fourth, third, third. That's okay on this one. You're not saying letters. I'll allow you to do that because we're working on intervals, what they look like. Now, we go to the right hand. Middle C, right? Two of those. And then we have a second, and they're catty-cornered because they're so close together. C, D, C, E. There's a third. Now, remember, our third on the left hand was space, space. Our third on the right hand here is line, line. But they sit on top of each other. That's how you know. These don't sit on top of each other. There's a space in between, and it looks like a fourth. It's a line and a space. It's kind of odd looking compared to the third. It's a little further. Back to the third. Now this, you have a right hand note, left hand note. What are the two notes? I hope you say D and G. Okay. Now we have a chord. Beautiful chord. It's not this kind of a chord. The C is actually up here, but it's okay. It's still a C chord. Talk about chords later. Don't worry about knowing why that's a C chord yet. E and G and a C. I want you to know that. E, G, C, as well as knowing that's a third. The distance in your hand, you'll feel that third from there to there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Now, moving on, I'd like you to try those three measures, see what you think about them, and then come back, and you've unpaused, and here we go. All right, so we have a space and a space, but they're not right on top of each other, so they're a fifth. Okay? Third, and I'm kind of looking at the left hand first, kind of, just kind of see what's going on so that when I put my right hand with it, I'm not totally lost. Catty-cornered, so a second, fifth, third, second, okay. Put my right hand with it, C, 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 D. Notice I kept holding my left hand. Even though I'm playing my right hand, I don't let this up. I don't go... I keep on 1, because this has got to be 4 counts, even though this is happening at the same time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I'm here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the left hand plays the whole time. You don't have to count the left hand because the right hand counts it for you, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what do we have? C, E. So the E's all by itself. We have a D. And yes, those are all together. F, G, and the D are together, okay? And if you're slow on this, it's okay. If it takes you a while and you have to think for a second, that's okay. If you lose your place, have to get your hands back, no problem there. Fix it right where you are, and then move on. And you may wonder, how long should you stay on each lesson? Well, it depends on till you kind of get it down. When you can play through it, limp through it, and you get most everything, maybe you have to pause here and there, then I think you're ready to move on. The point is to put something new in front of your face. Don't do the mistake of thinking you have to get this perfect. This isn't going to be the song of your life that you love forever. So use it for sight reading and move on, okay? All right, so we're going to do that. Take my own advice and move on here to the next line. Okay, so I always like to scan the left hand because left hand is always our weaker hand, and that's okay because, that helps us. Being right-handed or left-handed, we have a dominant hand, and that hand leads while the other one helps. And piano is that way. Piano is a right-handed, mostly, instrument. The left hand is kind of serves the right in general, and there's some pieces that have incredible left hand parts, but in general the left hand is supporting the right hand. Right hand's melody, left hand's chord structure. And I kind of like to look at the left hand because we kind of don't give it the attention it deserves sometimes. So I like to look at it first. Third. Now let me tell you something. C and E would also look like a third. If I played C and E together, that's a third. That's space, space. But in this example, it's E and G, okay? So it doesn't always have to be your thumb. D and F could be a third. line to line. If I had a note on a line, another note on a line. D and F would be a third as well. That's a third, that's a third, that's a third. Third is just intervals are talking about the distance between two notes, no matter what those two notes are. Okay? 2, 3, 4, fifth, second, and our third. Right hand, put it with it. 1, 2, 3, 4. E, F, G, 2, 3, 4. G, F, E, D, 2, and 3, and 4. Yes. All right, I'm going to play the whole thing in just a second. And I don't do that at the beginning because those of you with a really good ear, right, you would hear it. And even though you would try not to, you would use your ear to play it. You would, you know what notes sound, the sound of it would help you get to the next note. I don't want that to help you, at least not the first time. I want you to read it. Then once you hear it, you can't go back. You have it in your ear. That's fine. But the first time, I want you to play by sight, not by ear. Yeah, because we're going to use both things. Having a great ear is great, but you can't let the ear take over. You have to work on the sight reading as well, along with it. Okay, they're both going to help you. Okay, so let's play the whole thing. Okay, from the top. We'll have to scroll in the middle. Here we go. 1 and 2 and ready, left hand. 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, right hand. 1, 2, 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me scroll. One line to go. 1 and 2 and 3 and right there. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. G, F, E, D, 2, 3, 4. Now, so this is lesson 6. So you should be able to get through lessons 1 through 5. Play them every time you sit down. Don't say, "Oh, I've finished those. I've accomplished. I only have to do lesson 6." That's the way we did, piano lessons when we were kids. That's not good. As far as sight reading goes, it's not good. When you sit down, play everything you've done. They're not that long. It only takes a couple of minutes once you learn them. So, play lessons 1 through 5 and then 6. Not looking at your hands and actually looking at every note, even after you begin to memorize. It'll be a struggle for those of you who are in the habit of memorization. Your brain wants to turn off and go, okay, I've memorized this. Force yourself to look at the note that you're playing and say it out loud. That'll make a connection for you. Those of you who learned the wrong way are going to have a harder time than brand new people who've never done it. Just the way it is. It's harder to untrain that mindset, okay? So force yourself to look at every note, to say it out loud so that you make the connection. All right, that's lesson 6. I'll see you in lesson 7.